following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zoned Radio, and it's time for Dodgers baseball, a tale of two cities from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. My name is Peter Trunk, and as always, my co-hosts are Ron Rabinovitz and Robert Cole. Tonight we're going to start off the show, we're going to talk about the Mahatma, El Cheapo, Mr. Rickey, Branch Rickey, if you will. And in 1941, going back to the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1941, the fans were ecstatic because the Dodgers had won a pennant and gone to the World Series for the first time in 21 years. And the very next year, in 1942, they won over 100 games. So Dodger fans thought everything was hunky-dory and the Dodgers were set. However, when Rickey came in 1942, he saw differently. He saw that the war was upon us and that many of these guys were going to go into the service. And he knew that a lot of them were veterans and a little bit older. And Branch Rickey's philosophy was always, if you're going to trade a guy, trade him a year too early instead of a year too late. And that makes a lot of sense, even today. That makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to turn it over, if I may, to Robert Cole. And Robert's going to tell us a little bit. You know, I always wondered, and I know many people do, Dodger fans or just baseball fans in general, when Branch Rickey was forced out, quote unquote, forced out by Walter O'Malley, why wasn't it the opposite? Why didn't Branch Rickey force out Walter O'Malley, and why didn't he become the majority owner of the Dodgers and keep them in Brooklyn? And I never really answered that for myself, and I want the people that are listening to learn as I learn as we go along, and Robert Cole is going to take us down that avenue. Robert, go ahead.
Okay. Just a little brief history of the ownership of the Dodgers, and we'll basically start in 1902 when Charles Ebbets took over control of the Dodgers. He was the sole owner from 1902 to 1908. In 1908, he had started the building of what became Ebbets Field. Midway through the construction of Ebbets Field, he started to run out of money, and he made an agreement with two of the builders of the project, Edward McKeever and Stephen McKeever brothers, and in exchange for 50% of the ownership of the Dodgers, the McKeevers agreed to finish the building of Ebbets Field. So from 1908 to 1925, we had three owners, Charles Ebbets, Edward McKeever, and Stephen McKeever. And things went along pretty good. The Dodgers played pretty good ball. Everything was going along pretty well. And then in April 18th of 1925, Charles Ebbets died. Unfortunately, at his funeral, which was a cold, rainy day, Edward McKeever came down with pneumonia, and a week later he died. So within a week's time, the two of the three principal owners of the Brooklyn Dodgers were no longer. From 1925 to 1938, Stephen McKeever basically became the president of the team, and we had Edward McKeever's heirs and the Ebbets heirs as, part owners as well, and things started to get really chaotic during that time. Nobody knew who was doing what. Stephen really was not much of a baseball guy, and the team really started floundering during that time. In March of 1938, Stephen McKeever passed away, and he left his 25% share to his daughter Marie, also known as Dearie, who was married to James Mulvey. James Mulvey was involved in Hollywood with motion pictures. from 1939 to 1943, basically it was Marie and James Mulvey were the principal owners, and then you had the heirs of the Ebbets and Stephen McKeever's heirs running the team, and still things were not well. In fact, not so well at all that the National League wanted to try to bring in Branch Rickey at that time. Branch Rickey was doing well with St. Louis, decided not to, but he recommended one of his people, Larry MacPhail. MacPhail came in 1939, and from 1939 to 1943, as we've discussed in past shows, Larry MacPhail really brought the team back. This team was ready to file bankruptcy. Larry MacPhail came in. He got money from the bank, from George McLaughlin, to spruce up Ebbets Field, to start buying players. The team started to prosper, worked down their debt quite a bit. They actually put money in the bank. They had a balance of about $150,000, which in those days was a lot. And things were looking good. Well, as Peter said, they won the World Series in 1941, had a good 1942. The war started, and Larry MacPhail decided he was going to go back into the Army, which he did. Once again, there was a void in the Dodger, hierarchy, and once again, they reached out for Branch Rickey. This time, Branch said, yes, okay, I'll come in, and he did. Also, as Peter mentioned, with the war, Rickey didn't feel that a whole lot of money should be paid to older players. He spent a lot of money just prior to the war signing a lot of young players, a tremendous amount of young players. Many of them went off to war. The team did not do well in the standings, but Rickey was biding his time. When the war finally ended, all these players came back out, and the Dodgers had a plethora of riches, of ball players. One of the agreements that Rickey had when he was hired, he was not an owner at this time. He was hired as the president and general manager. He would receive $50,000 in salary, and he also got 10% of pre-tax profits from the team. This comes up real big in a little while. 1944, the McKeever shares, 25% Stephen McKeever shares, were put up on the block, and George McLaughlin of the Brooklyn Trust Company tried to put a group together. Rickey on his own didn't have the cash. Another gentleman who was roaming around the bank at that time, working on bankruptcies, Walter O'Malley, didn't really have the cash. And McLaughlin wanted both of them to be involved in a ownership group to take that 25% share. And he reached out to Andrew Schmitz. Andrew Schmitz is not known to a lot of people. He was a wealthy insurance man in Brooklyn at the time, and he basically became the third partner. Now, there's been a lot of conjecture that he was working for John Smith. That doesn't appear to be true. Andrew Schmitz on his own was one of the three partners at that time. They bought that 25% share for $347,000. In 1945, the Ebbets shares, which had been on the block for quite a while, and the Rickey Group had made several offers, which were turned down. Finally, an agreement was made that they would buy the Ebbets shares for $750,000, which put the total investment a little over $1 million. At that time, John Smith came forward. His name was now on the ownership group, and Andrew Schmitz dropped out. So 1945, they now owned 75%. Marie Mulvey and her husband owned the other 25%. And all of a sudden, that became a sticking point. James Mulvey was on the board of directors for many years because of his wife's owning, partnership. And when the new ownership group came into effect, there were a lot of problems. James Mulvey, wanted to do things one way, and the other three, banding together at this time, had other ideas, and basically Mulvey was forced off the board of directors. That was blamed on Rickey. Mulvey felt that Rickey was the reason why he was put off the board of directors, and this comes into play a little bit later. There were the three partners: John Smith, Branch Rickey, Walter O'Malley. O'Malley and Rickey, as we both know now, as we all know, very strong-willed people. And the swing vote in the three of them was always John Smith. And sometimes John Smith sided with Rickey. Sometimes John Smith sided with O'Malley. And it would go back and forth, back and forth. Okay. Rickey had a 5-year contract, okay, which was renewed for another 5 years in 46. It was going to be up in October of 1950. In 1950, Rickey got the idea that he was going to lose John Smith's vote and that Walter O'Malley would wind up being named president, okay? And there was no way he felt that he could be an employee of Walter O'Malley's. At that time, he offered to sell his ownership share to Smith and O'Malley. Smith, which the general public didn't know, was critically ill at the time and wound up dying a few months later, said no. O'Malley, being the smart ass he was, offered Rickey the same amount that Rickey had originally put in for his shares. Okay, that got Rickey really pissed off. Rickey went looking for his own buyer. Okay, he was good friends with John Galbraith, the president of the Pittsburgh Pirates. He went to Galbraith, and Galbraith put him in touch with a man by the name of William Zeckendorf. William Zeckendorf was very highly regarded in the real estate market. In fact, he was the man that produced the property that the United Nations is now built on. He was very big, a big wheeler dealer, had a lot of money, had a lot of power, a lot of influence. And he agreed to buy the Rickey share for $1 million, which totally pissed off Mr. O'Malley. O'Malley swore until his dying day that this was a setup and that Zeckendorf was never going to actually buy the shares. Zeckendorf, in his biography, and friends of Zeckendorf insisted that it was an honest buy, that Zeckendorf felt that he was going to be one of the owners, and, it totally was legitimate. Now, getting back to, why Rickey was going to sell and, not force O'Malley out, Rickey needed the money that he received in salary, okay? Rickey lived basically day to day. He didn't have anything else going on. He lived off his money. He had a large family. He took care of everybody. He basically needed that $50,000 and the percentage he got, from profits. If he was no longer the president, he felt that he probably would also get booted as general manager, and he would lose that income. He could not afford to just live on what little profits his 25% ownership share was going to be, and he felt he had to go. Then when John Smith passed away, it became public that John Smith in his papers said that Walter O'Malley would get his voting rights upon his demise. So now O'Malley was going to have a 2/3 vote on whether or not Rickey would be retained as president and general manager. So Rickey saw the writing on the wall even before 1950. He didn't feel his contract was going to be renewed, and he was looking to get out at that time. He felt that he had no power. The Mulveys were already pissed off at him. He had Mrs. Smith was going to let O'Malley do her voting for her. So basically he saw no way out but to get out. And to make matters worse for O'Malley, okay, when they turned down Zeckendorf's bid, $1 million bid, part of that contract was that if they did turn him down and O'Malley and Smith decided to buy the shares, that Zeckendorf would be given a $50,000 goodwill payoff for tying up his money. And as we discussed in previous shows, Peter brought it up, okay, when that check was cashed, that check was signed by Branch Rickey. In other words, Zeckendorf gave that money to Branch Rickey. which made it even more salt in the wound for Mr. O'Malley. But basically, that's why Rickey pretty much gave up without a fight. He saw the writing on the wall. He really had no choice but to do what was best for him, and he came out of it smelling pretty good.
He went to Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he went to Pittsburgh for a couple of years as their general manager, and then even when he gave up the general manager's role to Joe Brown, he was a consultant for a number of years.
Right.
He was an incredible guy. He really was.
His history with Galbraith shows that there was a little, I don't know if you used the word collusion. Didn't Galbraith run the Pirates, and then Branch Rickey wound up with the Pirates from 51 to 55?
Yeah, you could probably say that, but he went to Galbraith wanted Rickey to come work for him, okay, and Rickey could not do that and still be an owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Of course.
So Galbraith felt that the best way of getting Rickey to be his general manager was to find somebody to buy Rickey's shares, and basically that's what he did by, turning.
What's your gut feeling, Robert, about Zeckendorf? Do you think he was legit, or do you think it was all a Hollywood type of deal? In other words, bullshit deal.
No, I think he was legit. I mean, I read his biography. Papers of the time, talked to him. He did interviews. He was going on some of the different talk shows of that time. He had people, wanting to buy season tickets already from him. He had some reservations early because he was a little bit concerned that, Rickey was no longer going to be part of the team. The one thing that was a little fugazi was that supposedly Rickey told Zeckendorf that he would consider staying on as general manager. And I don't think that ever was in his mind, and that may have swayed Zeckendorf. But I think that it was a legitimate buy. Zeckendorf was, feeling pretty good about it. He was bragging to his friends he was going to be one of the owners of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Suppose O'Malley didn't fall for that, or I see already I'm putting it in the wrong context, but suppose O'Malley nixed that deal, and Zeckendorf did, and it did go through, and Zeckendorf became, in fact, one of the owners. How would it have been different, if at all, in your opinion?
Here's the interesting thing, all right? O'Malley, wanted land for a new ballpark. The man that could have done that for him was William Zeckendorf. At that time, Zeckendorf was a major wheeler and dealer. He probably could have easily, done some bargaining and manipulating and gotten the land that O'Malley wanted.
That's what I heard, right.
So it's interesting that, O'Malley would nix that. O'Malley knew who Zeckendorf was. He knew what Zeckendorf could do. And that's why, a lot of us go all the way back to that point when O'Malley was looking to leave Brooklyn.
Well, that was my next question for you. Is it feasible, and the answer is, of course it is it feasible that O'Malley was already planning on moving to Dodgers? And of course, we know that that's feasible. We're not saying it's a fact. We're saying it's feasible. And there's your semi-proof right there with the Zeckendorf deal, or the Zeckendorf non-deal, to be exact. Very, very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. And
sure.
we were all too young to really be in on all of this and the nuances of it. But we can read it years later and see, letters and quotes and what have you. And, it amazes me that there's a possibility, however weak or meek or not that strong, but there is an absolute how do you want to connecting the dots, if you will, that O'Malley had it in his head that early to move the Dodgers. Where? Not so sure where, but he had it in his head to move them. We
have a good idea where, Peter, because like we talked about previously, when John Smith passed away, Branch Rickey and Walter O'Malley were in Los Angeles. Rickey was there scouting players. What Walter O'Malley was doing is anybody's guess. But Walter O'Malley can be placed in Los Angeles in 1950. Remember, just several years before,
I know that.
The war, just before
the
war, the St. Louis Browns were going to go to Los Angeles. I mean,
exactly. December 7th, 1941.
Right. That was
December 7th, 1941. Right.
So, I mean, that was already in place and ready to go. Okay, in 1948, before O'Malley took over ownership, he basically was checking out whether Ebbets Field could be expanded or not. It was 1948, I believe it was. He was told it could be expanded, but would cost quite a bit of money. At that point, he said, although the fans of Brooklyn deserve a modern new ballpark, it's not in the cards at this time because of the cost. So he already knew what it would cost to, redo Ebbets Field, and that probably was out of the question. And, he was, looking for other places. Buzzy Bavasi said several times that there was no way he was staying in Brooklyn. If the Los Angeles deal hadn't worked out, he was going somewhere. Buzzy wasn't sure where, but he was going somewhere. The only way that O'Malley would have stayed in New York was if he was given the Shea Stadium spot, or if he was given the Brooklyn, Flatbush and Atlantic spot. Given, not bought, but given. That's what he was looking for. The other thing with O'Malley,
he didn't want to lease or rent.
Was if people, say, well, they were going to have this brand new ballpark, and O'Malley said he was going to buy $5 million worth of bonds.
Right.
Well, remember, O'Malley said over and over again he wanted to own the ballpark outright. If he had bought bonds, he would not have been able to buy the ballpark outright. He would have been a tenant. And he said over and over again he would not be a tenant. So that, again, was just another, smoke and mirror thing to buy some more time during that period of time when they had the Brooklyn Stadium Authority, looking at possibly buying the Atlantic and Flatbush. And then,
We've said it on the show many times in the past, and we'll say it again tonight, that all of us agree that O'Malley was not a stupid man. He was not he's not dumb or ignorant or anything like that. He was very, very clever guy, very astute guy, very shrewd, very clever. He knew what he wanted, and he knew how he wanted it. And when he got caught with his pants down once or twice, he doubled back, tripled back, and denied everything. I'm thinking right now of it was his idea to go to Flushing Meadow initially, and then when it was offered to him sometime later, he said, "How can we ever be the Queens Dodgers?" And he was not a nice guy. Very clever, shrewd guy, but not a nice guy, not a truthful guy, and very, very successful man. Be that as it may, whatever. Let's get back to Mr. Rickey. I think Ronnie wants to talk a little bit about Branch Rickey, and we'll give him the floor now. Go ahead, Ron.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Branch Rickey, he was a genius in his own right. He developed the first farm system in baseball. He started statistical analysis in evaluating players. He promoted modern training methods and equipment. Besides being a GM, he did player development and scouting. He hired the first team statistician. He opened spring training in Vero Beach. He implemented new training techniques, including pitching machines. And he was probably seen as the greatest person to evaluate raw talent. He was really good at that. So those were a few things I just wanted to interject. I thought he was
not only started the pitching machines, started the pitching machines, but he started the batting cages.
Right.
He started batting helmets.
Yeah.
He
came up with a lot of things.
The first full-time spring training facility, Dodgertown, Vero Beach. And like you said, he started with the sabermetrics. Actually, he was the grandfather of sabermetrics by hiring Alan Roth, who was a statistician for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And Alan Roth, as we all know, we've said hundreds of things. Well, let's not exaggerate, dozens of things about Alan Roth in the past.
Right.
Let's say one other thing. Alan Roth was the first guy to come up with on-base percentage.
Right.
Not many people know that. Back in those days, everything was batting average. What was his batting average? What did he hit? What was his batting average? What was his batting average? Alan Roth said, you know what's more important than batting average? On-base percentage. And he explained how it was figured out very simply. And that became quite a cornerstone in MLB history and continues to this day. Yeah. To me, it's a shame that Rickey didn't continue with the Brooklyn Dodgers. He never would have moved the team out of Brooklyn. Never. And
no.
We still would have had them here, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it went, and those are the facts as they lie. I want to thank both of you for your input on that. That was very enlightening, very interesting. Let's hop, skip, and jump out to Los Angeles before we hang up the phones and talk about the Los Angeles iteration of the Dodgers. And, generally speaking and specifically speaking, we can specifically talk about last week, all three of us predicted that Bryce Harper would be a Dodger by this show. And as we know, he is a Philadelphia Philly. What are your feelings about that, Ronnie?
Well, I don't agree about signing a guy for that 13 years. My God, he'll be 39 years old. And giving him that kind of money, it's just, I know the Dodgers had made an offer. They were going to give him more money, but a shorter contract. And this was just unbelievable. 13 years. I mean, who ever heard of it? We were talking, nobody wants to sign a player for 10 years. Now it's 13 years. I mean, he'll be 39. It's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
And
it was interesting for me to see. It was interesting for me to see that today it came out that in the past, the very short past, the last few days, that Mr. Harper has made a statement regarding Mr. Trout out in the land of the Angels.
Right.
And he got in trouble for that.
He
came out with a statement saying that if you don't think I'm going to call Steve Trout to come to Philadelphia, you got to be crazy. And, of course, that's a no-no. That's bordering on tampering. And he's going to get in trouble for that. He's already in trouble for it. It's not going to be a big deal. It's not like he's going to get suspended or anything. But, that was a hell of a statement to come out with. And people that follow this kind of stuff know that Steve Trout's major love in life are the Philadelphia Eagles, and he goes to every game. He goes to every game they play, and he's a big Eagles fan, and he probably always wanted to play in Philadelphia. And for Harper to come out and say that, make that statement, it's just absolutely
it's like
incredible. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Robert Cole?
Well, I don't think Bryce Harper is the sharpest tack thrower at all times. After all, the man in his opening speech about Philadelphia said, "I can't wait to bring a pennant to D.C." So
exactly, that's exactly what he said.
Yeah,
I have that quote.
What he said.
I have that quote. Right.
So what can you say about that? Mike Trout, has said privately to people that he hopes to remain an Angel for the rest of his career. And this is a guy that, I believe. I don't think he's just saying that. Why go to Philadelphia? You can be an Eagles fan. Football season is different than the baseball season. And I think that with Harper being there now, that may be all the more reason not to go.
Well, I'll tell you what. Since my predictions are always 100% correct, I am going to go out on a limb and predict that in the near future, Trout becomes a Philly. And my record in predicting baseball is absolutely perfect. I'm 0 for 1,000.
For Harper going to the
so this will probably make 0 for 1,001. And I apologize for calling him by his incorrect name before. But I think Trout's going to be a Philly in the long run. I really do. I think so. And I'm probably wrong. I'm wrong about everything else. But there's my prediction out there, right there for everyone to hear and to roll their eyes about. Robert Cole, let me ask you about.
I have a quick
what do you think?
Question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Peter, I had a question.
Sure.
What was Bryce Harper's batting average last year?
249, 244?
249, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I know he had a lot of home runs, but can you imagine signing a guy with a 249?
Well, I'm going to tell you what. To be fair,
$350 million.
Well, let's be fair. Yeah. He was batting about, as I remember, off the top of my head. I have no stats in front of me. I don't have my phone in front of me, my personal computer, nothing. He was batting about 188 all year, and then he finished at 249. So he really brought it up after the All-Star game, and he is like a 272 lifetime hitter or whatever. I can live with that. If he had signed with the Dodgers, I wouldn't be harping on his 249 average. But he is one of the elite ball players in the major leagues today, along with Trout, Machado, and a few others. He's right up there. He's in the top 5 or 6. So it's not that he's a bum or anything. It's just that I hate this saying, and I use it every week. And I hate myself when I play the show back and I hear myself saying it. I roll my own eyes, but it is what it is. He hit 249 last year, but he is one of the elite players in Major League Baseball. He ranked very, very low, maybe the lowest of all defensive right fielders last year. But we're told now that he played most of the season with a bum knee, and that he couldn't get jumps on balls. His knee was bothering him, whatever. I look for Trout to have a sensational career, a long, sensational career, probably a Hall of Fame career. And I wish him well or whatever. 13 years is way too long. I agree with that. But I think the next 5 or 7 years he's going to rip it up. He's going to be great. And what I want to know from Robert Cole is, what do you know about? What do you think about? What do you feel about two different things? Kershaw's shoulder and Corey Seager's elbow, Robert Cole.
Well, I'd be very, very concerned about Kershaw. His innings the last couple of years, have been way down. And before we even get started this year, he's having problems already. I'd be very concerned about that. He's got a lot of miles on that arm. Who knows, if he's even going to be able to come back to anything like he was. Corey Seager, I'd be concerned about. I'd probably be giving him a first baseman's glove right now just to get his bat in the lineup.
Right.
I don't know. I don't like what I've seen. Whether they're being overly cautious with him right now, I don't know. But, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good at all.
No.
Okay, Ronnie
and
Rivera.
Russell Martin.
Russell Martin, bad back, yeah. Yeah, bad back. Yeah.
I mean, he might end up on the DL.
Ronnie, let me ask you this question, Ronnie Rabinovitz. If you were the general manager of the Dodgers and you had the okay from ownership to get one player between, they gave you the option, get Dallas Keuchel or Kimbrel for relief, which one would you go after and why?
Keuchel. I think.
And why?
Because he could be a starting pitcher, right?
Sure.
Keuchel?
Well, he is a starting pitcher, yes.
He is.
Yeah, and they need another starting pitcher.
Well, you know what? They have 7 starters. If you count Kershaw, they got 7 legitimate starters. I don't know who they have. Robert Cole knows a lot about the bridge guy, the 8th inning guy that they got. He was an ex-New York Met.
Kelly
to get to Larry Jansen. To reach Larry Jansen in the 9th inning, they got a bridge guy for the 8th inning who used to be the closer for the New York Mets. Robert Cole, you want to comment on that?
I'm trying to search my memory for who we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe Kelly?
Who was No. They got Joe Kelly. That's true. They got Joe Kelly. Didn't the Dodgers sign the Mets' former closer? Maybe I got my teams mixed up here.
No.
I think you do.
No, I know that was the Red Sox.
Oh, the Red Sox did that.
Henry Mejia.
Ah, Mejia. Where is Familia? Where did Familia wind up? Back with the Mets?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I get my teams mixed up. A lot. Well, when you're 72, it's very easy to get.
You're entitled. You're entitled.
I'm entitled. I'm entitled. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure, Ronnie Rabinovitz, that I would go after Keuchel instead of Kimbrel, and I'll tell you why. I like Keuchel. I like him a lot. He gives you a lot of innings. He's a big, strong guy. He's a starting pitcher for all his career, and he's got a great history. Kimbrel, on the other hand, started to slack off after the All-Star game last year. Some of his saves were walking on the tight wire, the high wire axe. He would walk a couple of guys, and then he would get a guy to line out to the warning track or whatever. There were a couple of heart-pounding saves. He also did not do well in not save situations. If he was brought in up 5 runs or up 4 runs, which was not a save situation, he would always start off 3-0, walk the guy. The next guy would get a hit. The next guy would get another hit. Whatever. He was very poor in those situations. So your choice of Keuchel, I would take Keuchel also. If ownership told me you can get one guy, Peter, you go out and you get Kimbrel, or here's the money you can offer him, or you go out and you get Keuchel and here's the money you can offer him. I would go out and get Keuchel too. However, that being said, they do have 7 starters, and you never have enough bullpen, especially if you're a Dodger fan. You know that. You don't know. We've got guys out in that bullpen that you bring them in and you are praying. You're on your knees in front of the TV set praying, because you never know if the guy's going to come in and strike out 3 guys in a row, or if he's going to start walking guys. And Baez. You never know. You never know. Very streaky, very, very streaky and unreliable. But Kimbrel last year, at the end of the year and in the postseason, was the same thing. He was very unreliable, so I'm not so sure. He has great numbers, though. If you look at Kimbrel's numbers, they're Hall of Fame. His numbers are incredible. He's got incredible stats. But
if Russell Martin ends up on the DL, you're going to go with one catcher?
We're going to have to – I think they're going with 3 catchers, right?
How are they going to get 3?
Aren't they going with
They got
Go
Barnes.
ahead, Robert.
Yeah, they have Russell Martin as their second catcher right now, and then they have some guys in the minors, a guy by the name of Rocky Yale, another guy by the name of Will Smith. They also have Josh Toll,
Ruiz,
catcher.
Who's that, Robert? Who?
Josh Toll.
Yes, Josh Toll, right? The ex-Met. Right.
And
Ruiz. The kid Smith is going to be good, but he's only 19.
Yeah.
The kid Smith is much too young. They got another guy, Ruiz.
I think he's the guy. So if Martin goes on the DL, they're going to probably bring Ruiz up.
You're going to have to get hip to the 2019 lingo, Ronnie. It's the IL now.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
The injured list. It's no longer the disabled list.
I know. It's IL. Yeah. Crazy.
That's so funny. Yeah.
So
you know what? The Dodgers, in my opinion, the Dodgers have the team that's going to win the National League West. That's not going to be their problem. What their problem is going to be is getting past anyone after they clinch the National League West. And hopefully they will, if the trading deadline is still July 31st, I don't know if they changed that. They're trying to change it. No? Okay. Well,
I don't think they changed it yet.
Well, then instead of using a date, I'll just use the term trading deadline. The Dodgers will probably pick someone up at the trading deadline, 1 or 2 people that they need, especially if they're right in it. If they're in first place, in late July by a game or 2, or if they're out of first place by a game or 2, if they're right there, they will go out and do what they have to do. They always do. They don't do too much in the off season, but they do a lot in late July. And we'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see. The thing is, there's a possibility. Anything and everything is possible. We all know that in life, and especially in Major League Baseball. And Kershaw might, M-I-G-H-T, might be finished. We don't know.
I'm surprised they didn't do an MRI yet.
We have no clue. You know what? I think they're afraid what they're going to find.
I think they are too.
I think they're afraid.
They are too.
They're actually afraid what they're going to find, because then everyone else will know that they're in a corner, and they'll raise all the prices. I'm not so sure the Dodgers didn't have an MRI done on the sly and that they know what the damage is. And they're not making it public. And that can only be bad news, because if it were good news, they would have said, oh, we had an MRI. Everything is fine, structurally fine.
Right.
Everything is structurally fine. Since they have not come out and said that, if they did an MRI on the sly, they know it's not good news.
No,
and they're not telling anybody.
I agree.
Because everybody would raise all the prices. Oh, the Dodgers are in deep shit. Here we go. We'll raise all the prices for all the guys. You know, Keuchel all of a sudden, everybody else will be like sky high. And, you know, they missed out on Corbin. They missed out on Paxton. They missed out on a lot of guys, a few guys at any rate. A couple of years ago, they missed out on Verlander. They
missed out on Keuchel as well because
they missed out on Keuchel as well. They missed out on the ex-Philly left-hander who ultimately went to the Cubs. The good-looking guy, Hollywood-looking guy, what's his name? Cole Hamels. They missed out on him. They missed out on Verlander when they took the wrong guy, when they took Yu Darvish. So they missed out on a bunch of guys. Of guys. Hopefully they won't keep on missing out. But as we sit here tonight, on March the 6th, it doesn't look like they are, to me, they don't look like a World Series champion. They look like they can win the National League West, and that's about it right now.
Well, okay, I'm not a Dodger fan, all right? You guys know that. But if I was a Dodger fan, I wouldn't be too confident right now. You know, look at your starting pitching, okay? You know, Peter, you say they have 6 or 7 starters. Well, you don't know about Kershaw. Walker Buehler is going into his second season. We know what happens a lot of times with second seasons, especially when you put a lot of innings in.
Sophomore jinx, right?
Okay, Rich Hill, has had, past problems. To me, the starting staff is not anything to, hang my hat on right now.
That's why I said Keuchel.
I like both. I like both of the other guys. I like Ryu and I like Urias. I like them a lot, both of them. I think
I do
they're going
too.
to do well. I think they're going to do very well.
Again,
I'm not sure about.
Urias.
I'm not sure about their middle relief. I don't know. I think they have enough gas to win the National League West. That's all. That's all they have right now, in my opinion, in my baseball opinion. They have enough gas to win the National League West. That's it. What? Go ahead.
Look at the struggle they had last year, Peter. Okay, and this year you're also going to have, besides Colorado and Arizona, San Diego has improved tremendously.
Right. They have.
San Diego gets another pitcher in the mix. They're going to be a lot of trouble. So,
Do you think the Dodgers were a better team last year than this year?
If you're asking me that question, I would say
yes.
It's about the same, I think. Just about the same. I think Pollock, yeah, I do. I think Pollock, if he doesn't get injured, can do statistically just what the Wild Horse did, Puig. I don't think they'll be hurting too much there. The trouble with the Dodgers is, to me, is Seager's injury and no catcher.
Yeah.
Those are my concerns. When they lost out on Real Muto, not only did it hurt me because I like the Mets, but it hurt me because I thought the Dodgers were a lock for Real Muto at catcher.
Yeah.
But they missed out on him. They didn't get him, and it hurts.
Yeah, they're very weak up the middle now. Catching,
they what?
And short.
Weak up the middle.
Yep.
The only thing they have
weak
right now.
Weak up the middle. They got a platoon at second base. They got Seager's bad arm at short, and
he hasn't even thrown the ball yet. He's been hitting. but he has not been playing shortstop.
Well, they say he's going to be starting to play in the minor leagues this week or next week, whatever. He's going to start playing shortstop in the minor leagues and see what happens. I wouldn't hold too much hope that Seager's going to be back like he was two or 3 years ago when he was a rookie and after. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he'll be a shadow. He'll have to work his way back. I think maybe next season he'll be at 100%.
Right.
I don't think he'll be at 100% all this summer.
No.
I really don't.
He won't be ready.
That about does it, right? That about covers all the bases. No pun intended.
Next week.
Yeah. Well, that was good. That was Branch Rickey, and once again, the saga of the Brooklyn Dodgers and their ownership, not to be beaten to death because very, very interesting stuff that happened back then. And I want to thank both of you gentlemen, both Ronnie Rubinovitz and Robert Cole, for your input and another great show. And until next week, I will bid you both a very good night, and be careful out there. And thank you again.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.